participated in 5K runs. It was grueling for a woman in her early 50s at the time, and one that was not exactly in athletic shape. Both my knees paid a price for running on all that pavement. In the last 5 years, I have had both of my knees replaced. So a dear friend of mine said, my superpower is that I have outlived both my knees. There were times I wanted to give up. Many of my friends and co-runners gave up long before I did. But I managed to continue for about 3 years. 1 year alone, I ran 12 5Ks, which is 3.1 miles. I was tempted to give up long before my knees became a problem, but I didn't. Although my knees paid a price for my running, I benefited from running in other ways. It helped me to build some self-confidence, make new friends, and strengthen my faith. As you know, a common tradition during this season of Lent is to give up something, like a bad habit. This is not a bad idea, but what I would like for us to give up for Lent this year is giving up. I would like for us to treat Lent as if it was a 5K run. A 5K run or any other such run is a sprint, a marathon, a relay race, or hurdles, is a good way to think about the season of Lent. This is a season that is designed to prepare us for what lies ahead. Just as Jesus had to endure the cross, you and I need to cross the finish line. We may not be the first to cross the finish line, but it's not about who finishes first. It's about who can finish at all. We can all get there at our own pace, but get there we must. And to get there, we have to give up the temptation to give up. Giving up is not only a temptation, but it is one that is most consequential. As we just heard, even Jesus was tempted to give up and take the advice of the tempter. According to the story, after Jesus is baptized, the Holy Spirit leads him into the desert for a time of prayer and fasting. In the biblical tradition, fasting usually implies that a person is engaged in a great spiritual struggle. It does not necessarily mean a complete abstinence from food, although there's not much food to be had in a desert. There's no dessert in a desert. One cannot survive 40 days and 40 nights, or an extended period of time without any food at all. So Jesus is experiencing real hunger. Why does Jesus do this? It is at his baptism that he seems to have received his calling as the Christ or Messiah. He needs time to reflect on this, so he seeks some alone time. But if the story is to be taken literally, Jesus is not alone. At the very least, he is struggling with his own inner thoughts. Whatever Jesus is thinking about in the desert, a few temptations creep into his mind or come to him from a creepy little guy called the devil. Either way, Jesus is tempted to give up in 3 ways. First, because he is so hungry He is tempted to pull out the old bread machine and make some bread and give up the fast. He is so hungry that he begins to hallucinate and imagine that the surrounding rocks are misshapen loaves of bread. Second, he is tempted to give up his otherworldly aspirations and imagine this world where he is in charge. All he has to do is sell his soul to the devil, and he will take over the throne, not only in Jerusalem, but in the all-known world. Imagine this would have been heard in Rome. Imagine, what do you think Caesar, the ruler at the time, would think? Would he even be amused? I doubt it. Third, Jesus is tempted to give up his humanity and rely on his divinity to make him invincible. After all, he has just heard a voice at his baptism affirming his divinity. Perhaps Psalm 91 has tempted him to think that as God's son, he can do pretty much anything he wants to do without being harmed, even jumping from the pinnacle of the temple in Jerusalem. Let's be honest here. These are not our common, everyday, give-up temptations. You and I may not be able to relate to giving up a fast after 40 days in the desert, giving up our otherworldly aspirations, or giving up our humanity. But we can relate to the temptation to give up in general. We can relate to the temptation to give up on our hopes and dreams for a better future, a better life, or even life itself. We can relate to the temptation to give up on our families, our spouses, our children, or even ourselves. We can relate to the temptation to give up on our jobs, our employers, or even our fellow employees. We can relate to the temptation to give up on our country, our politics, our government, our institutions, or even our fellow Americans. We can relate to the temptation to give up on God, the church, and our brothers and sisters in the faith. We can relate to the temptation to give up on our faith because sometimes it is as grueling as a 5K run. So, my dear brothers and sisters, let us commit to one thing this season of Lent. Let us commit to give up our temptation to give up. Let us use our worn-out knees to kneel down before God and commit to crossing the finish line.